As the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of grey and pink, Rekha and Jalu slipped away from the sleeping village. They crossed the invisible line that marked the boundary of the forbidden forest, and the world seemed to change instantly. The air grew cooler and heavier, thick with the scent of damp moss, decaying leaves and something else, an unfamiliar musky odor that made the hairs on Rekha's arms stand on end. The sounds of the familiar woods faded behind them, replaced by an unnerving silence. The trees here were giants, their trunks scarred and ancient, their branches draped in long ghostly strands of moss that swayed gently in the still air. Jalu walked with his belly low to the ground, his nose twitching as he took in the strange new smells. He stayed so close to Raka that his fur brushed against his master's leg with every step. The forest floor was a soft carpet of moss and fallen leaves, muffling their footsteps and creating an eerie sense of isolation. Rekha's senses were on high alert. He noticed that there were no bird calls here, no chattering of squirrels, no signs of the small creatures that usually filled the woods with life. It was as if all the animals knew to avoid this place, leaving it to a single, dominant presence. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft padding of their own feet. After several hours of cautious travel, Rekha found the first sign. It was not a track he recognized. Scraped into the damp earth was a long, deep furrow, as if something massive and heavy had dragged itself across the ground. The mark was wide, wider than any log he had ever seen moved by a storm. Alongside it, he saw strange, V-shaped indentations pressed into the soil, spaced far apart. He knelt, examining the marks closely. They were fresh. The musky scent he had noticed earlier was stronger here, clinging to the disturbed earth. Jalu let out a low, guttural growl, his hackles raised as he stared nervously into the dense undergrowth ahead. Rekha placed a reassuring hand on Jalu's head, though his own heart was pounding in his chest. He knew this was the trail of no ordinary creature. The legends of the horned serpent flooded his mind, but he pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. He was a hunter, and this was a track. With his spear held ready, he decided to follow it. The trail led them deeper into the heart of the forest, through dark groves of twisted trees and across shallow, black water streams. The suspense grew with every step, the feeling of being watched intensifying until it was a physical pressure against his skin. They were not alone, and they were drawing closer to whatever had made the strange marks. The trail led them to a large clearing, a place where the ancient trees parted to reveal a sky the color of slate. In the center of the clearing lay a vast, still pool of water, its surface as dark and reflective as polished obsidian. Mist rose from the water in slow, swirling tendrils, coiling around the bases of the trees like ghostly spirits. The musky scent was overpowering here, hanging thick and heavy in the air. Raka motioned for Jalu to stay back, his instincts screaming that they had reached their destination. He crept forward, his spear held tightly in his grip, his eyes scanning the perimeter of the pool for any sign of movement. Suddenly, the surface of the water broke. It was not a ripple, but a great upheaval, as something immense rose from the depths. First came the head, larger than any boulder Rekha had ever seen. It was covered in scales that were not black, but a deep, iridescent green and blue, shimmering like 1,000 beetle wings even in the dim light. Atop its massive head was a crown of horns, not of bone, but of a material that looked like petrified wood, gnarled and twisted into menacing shapes. Then its eyes opened, and Rekha felt his breath catch in his throat. They were not the eyes of a beast. They were orbs of molten gold, ancient and intelligent, and they fixed upon him with an unnerving, knowing gaze. The creature continued to emerge from the pool, its colossal body uncoiling with a silent, fluid grace. It was the horned serpent of the legends, brought to life in all its terrifying and magnificent glory. Its body was as thick as the oldest trees in the forest, and it seemed to have no end as it rose higher and higher, its head towering above Raka. The serpent did not hiss or roar, it simply watched him, its presence dominating the clearing, radiating an aura of immense power and antiquity. Raka stood frozen, a small and insignificant figure before this mythical being. The stories had not done it justice. They could not capture the sheer scale and mystical beauty of the Guardian. For a long moment, Hunter and Serpent remained motionless, locked in a silent standoff. Reika could feel the creature's ancient consciousness pressing in on him, a weight in his mind that was far more intimidating than any physical threat. He saw the mist from the pool swirl around the serpent's body, clinging to its scales like a living cloak. He noticed the delicate patterns on its skin, intricate and complex, like the markings on a sacred map. This was not just an animal driven by hunger or instinct. It was something more, something elemental and deeply connected to the land itself. He was trespassing in the home of a god. The spell of awe was broken by a sudden sharp bark. Jalu, unable to bear the tension any longer, lunged forward, his loyalty overriding his fear. He snapped at the serpent's massive tail where it lay coiled at the edge of the pool. The great creature, which had been focused entirely on Reika, turned its head with startling speed. Its golden eyes narrowed, and a low, resonant hiss, like the sound of a great wind rushing through a canyon, escaped its lips. It was a sound that vibrated through the ground and deep into Reika's bones. The serpent's attention shifted from the man to the brave, foolish dog. Reika's instincts took over. He could not let Jalu die. With a powerful cry that shattered the clearing silence, he charged forward, his spear aimed at the serpent's massive head. The duel began. It was not a battle of brute force, but a desperate dance of survival. Reika was swift and agile, a blur of motion as he dodged and weaved, trying to find a weakness in the serpent's shimmering scales. The serpent, for all its size, moved with a terrifying liquid grace. Its head would strike like lightning, its massive fangs as long as Reika's forearm, narrowly missing him as he dove aside. The fight was a grueling ordeal. Reika's spear felt like a toothpick against the creature's hide. He managed to land a few glancing blows, but the stone tip merely skittered off the hard, iridescent scales, leaving barely a scratch. The serpent, in turn, seemed to be testing him, its attacks powerful but almost restrained, as if it were measuring his strength and his courage. Jalu, ever loyal, darted in and out, nipping at the serpent's tail, creating a vital distraction that allowed Reika to evade the creature's deadly strikes. The air was filled with the sounds of Reika's grunts of effort, Jalu's frantic barks, and the serpent's deep, rumbling hisses. Exhaustion began to set in. Reika's muscles burned and his lungs screamed for air. During one desperate lunge, he slipped on the damp moss. The serpent saw its chance. Its massive tail whipped around, striking Reika with incredible force and sending him flying through the air. He landed hard against the trunk of an ancient tree, his spear clattering to the ground out of his reach. Dazed and winded, he looked up to see the serpent's enormous head looming over him, its golden eyes filled with a cold, final light. He had failed. His life, and Jalu's, was about to end. He closed his eyes, bracing for the final blow.